So welcome, Steve, to the Conservatory in Google Norfolk. Thank you very much for coming here and joining us talking about artificial intelligence. For those of the folks joining us today, you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for inviting me. It's been my lifelong dream to sit here with you. I can't think of the number of hours of video calls that we've done together, and I've visualized what it's like to actually be here and also go and feed apples to the donkeys and be surrounded by all the dogs like Winston. And today it's become a reality. And that's my overriding memory of visiting this beautiful house in Norfolk. But it's also a great opportunity for us to record this video. I'm Steve Wainwright. I lead the global SAP sales organization here at Google Cloud. We have a team of SAP specialists, the deep experts who work with our partners and customers to help customers plan their transition and migration of their SAP systems to the cloud and to modernize those with technologies like AI and analytics.
So it's an interesting time in terms of AI. Lots of excitement, a lot of opportunity. What's the biggest challenge you think that most customers face?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is, reacting to changes in the global market. Macroeconomic and political conditions are changing, which is impacting particularly organizations that trade internationally. Also, it's affecting the attitude here in Europe of enterprises towards data protection, data sovereignty, and that's suddenly become top of mind for these organizations. And if you think about the data they've got inside an SAP system, it's pretty important data, financial, customer, product information, that they rely on to run the business, but they've also got to protect. And in a world where we're seeing the increased adoption of AI, we're also seeing the impact of AI in manifesting or augmenting the threat to us as it's being used more aggressively as part of cyber attacking. And so a lot of environments are being compromised. And we've seen some major companies have their supply chains compromised in recent times, which has had wide financial ramifications beyond the P&L of that company. We've seen entire ecosystems at Jaguar Land Rover be shut down, the government having to intervene. And so that really does raise, I think, the biggest issue right now, a sovereignty, a control over data, the impact of AI on my business. And in the background, we've got the whole challenge of, how do I get to S4? Can I get there by the deadline? How do I build the business case to justify that? And do I do that with the SAP RISE program or go directly to the hyperscaler?
I think that AI is a bit like dog years, isn't it? It's moving at such a pace. Do you see a change in the conversation over the last 6 months?
Change, it's dominating the conversation. So rather than it being a technology as a side innovation project, it's the overarching theme that really prevails in any CIO conversation now. Why is that? Because I think there's a really elevated awareness across society that this can be transformational and really influence the way people work, even down to the point of eliminating roles or creating roles. So I think every organization feels they've got to adopt it and get on the bandwagon, but they're not quite sure where to start. There is no question beyond my mind that if people look to apply AI to their enterprise, SAP is going to be part of that conversation because it underscores so many processes in those large enterprises. So if you're thinking about AI, the conversation, the thought process is always going to encapsulate SAP and SAP systems. And so these organizations are thinking, well, how do I modernize a process? Well, should I be doing that within the core SAP system, or should I be elevating that above the SAP system and doing that in an agentic layer? And then if I do that, how does that interrelate with the system of record I have? And how do I maintain security policies and controls if I'm starting to use that in an environment which isn't as rigorous as an ERP system?
It's interesting. You start to realize that these systems aren't islands, are they, in an organization? They are interconnected. But with respect to SAP, what do you think about Google's partnership with SAP that would help, kind of help them on their journey from artificial intelligence? And also, follow-on question, what sort of relationship should customers have with SAP and Google as it pertains to artificial intelligence?
So we were talking to a customer this afternoon, Matthew, and I think they were not uncommon in being a big SAP user, but not an exclusive SAP user. What do I mean? That SAP supports a large part of their enterprise and many business processes, but they have many other systems of record that provide discrete functionality in a specific area of the business, probably connects to SAP system. And so if you're thinking about a business process, you have to think beyond the boundaries of your SAP system and look at all the systems of record, all the data and all the process flows, whether they're manual or automated, within your organization in their entirety, number one. Number two, there's an AI explosion. Every vendor, every application vendor is launching Agentforce, we've seen come out from Salesforce. ServiceNow has their own offering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So people are sitting there confused saying, well, which one should I use? Well, our answer is it depends on the use case. And a simple rule is if the use case is within the application itself and the boundaries of the data don't go beyond that data model, and that then really you can look at that intrinsically embedded AI tool to perform that task. The moment that you're starting to look at data sets outside of that application environment, different large language models, then you've got to take a more enterprise approach to tool selection. And almost certainly my answer would be this. Look at the use case, look at what is offered natively inside SAP or another application, and determine is it fit for purpose. And if it means you need 3, 4 or 10 agents, that's okay, as long as you have an agentic framework that's going to orchestrate and coordinate the way those agents work together. And that's why Google has spent so much time, energy, and effort on developing an A2A agentic framework, because it's key that all of these independent agents can work together and talk to each other through an open API layer that allows controlled, secure collaboration to deliver those automated, integrated business processes.
You mentioned transformation. Now, SAP has this term, transformation as a service, for RISE. I wonder if that word's a little bit overused. Could you give us some examples of where you think there is true transformations from an AI perspective, particular customer innovations that you've seen from an AI perspective?
I can think of one particular customer in Thailand, which is an international agri-business called Better Grow. And I was talking to the CIO when I met him at Sapphire in Orlando. What he's done is he's liberated AI capabilities and made them available to every employee in the business. As we know, it's very difficult to learn how to interact with different systems of record and perform business processes. So if you think about it, having a prompt in front of a business application liberates that application and makes it easy for the user to interact with that application. They don't need to have deep knowledge of how it works or be trained. He's taken that approach and created a prompt-based UI for all of employees across all of their systems of record. And also, alongside that, he's put access to a lot of AI tools and large language models like Gemini, but he's also using OpenAI technology and other AI, Gen AI, large language models as well, and technologies underneath that prompt layer. So think about the prompt being the employee or the user's interface to any system within his enterprise.
That's amazing. So you've got full access to the entire enterprise systems, and you can just ask it in natural language.
That's the power of it. What training is needed? How do you liberate the user? Does the user really need to know which system or which database to interrogate? You're taking away that challenge from them.
So when you go on that journey to AI, there's a talk of sort of having data readiness. So AI is no good unless the data's ready and available. And in that example, that must be a good example where they spent time getting their data ready. Do you have any sort of words of advice on what people can do for data readiness?
Well, I think, there is a probably one view in the world that AI will solve all of the data problems that existed in the enterprise before. and they didn't. There's been a myriad of BI tools around for years, and what's inhibited the success of BI tools is the lack of effort that's been put into creating a data foundation that's properly structured, properly governed, to enable the tools on top to work. And I think that also applies to AI, really. And so, if you think of SAP, the data naming conventions are difficult for a business user to understand, particularly when you start to customize SAP and build custom tables. What we've done at Google is we've built a framework called Cortex, which simplifies that. It takes that complexity, that, if you like, foreign language, and translates those data entities and the naming conventions into simple business user language. And so they can look at that and see things like a sales order, a purchase order, an invoice. Okay, I know what that is. I know what that entity is, and I know how I want to set up a query that combines those data entities to provide me with an answer. So there's an example of taking a large data set, adding some intelligence, converting it into a data mart that the agent can interpret and understand and act on.
Interesting. When you see a lot of the vendors, and you touched on this in the beginning of this, you see a lot of them talking about their data model, their knowledge graph. If you put everything into their almost walled garden of technology, they'll take care of you and make this a much more seamless in experience. Do you see this single sort of data model inside SAP as an example prevailing for AI, or do you see it being multiple data models, different vendors, even customer models being brought into the mix?
I don't see how any one vendor or any one enterprise can provide the ubiquitous data model or data architecture to serve any user and any query and any use case. I think it's an impossible aim. And I think we have to recognize that and embrace that, and really accept that to be successful, you need to have an open architecture, an open philosophy that allows you to incorporate internal and external data sets, and have the technology that can interrogate and bring those together, but do that in a way that still protects the integrity and the authenticity of the results that come back, or validates that at least, and protects copyright issues and so on, and also doesn't compromise the security of the enterprise. That's the risk that has to be balanced.
So we've talked about data. I know, talking even with inside our Alphabet team, there's often a sort of a human element to this. And I think there's two parts. The first part is the actual process itself. Does it require, do we have confidence in the AI? Do we need a human in the loop? And then there's also maybe a cultural element. Is that part of the business ready? And I know in our organization, there are certain pockets where the data and the culture align and others don't. But, do you have any sort of commentary on the sort of we've talked about the data, we've talked about the technology, we've talked about the interconnectivity. What about the people?
Great question, Matt. I think back to my early days in IT, and I was a specialist in the CRM area. And there was an explosion in CRM investment, in CRM technology and CRM projects, particularly at the time when Siebel came to the market, and then many of the large software vendors jumped on the CRM bandwagon. What the telling statistic for me was, Accenture did a study of CRM projects by major companies, and they found that 80% of those projects failed. 80%. Literally billions of dollars were spent on trying to implement CRM to create that single source of customer, single 360 view of the customer, single source of the truth. I can go in and look at the full customer relationship through one lens and answer any customer query. Well, it sounds like a logical thing to do, but very few companies achieved it. Yet the technology was there. The answer is why? Well, it's very simple. It's because the users weren't involved from the outset of the project. They didn't understand the aims, the ambitions. They weren't involved in shaping those aims, ambitions, and goals, and help build the plan to achieve that. As a result, they were resistant to that change, and change is a human as well as a technological process. And without the two working in harmony, you're going to fail. AI is no different, in my opinion. For this to be successful, you've got to take the users on board from the very beginning, right through to this is what the technology can do. Let's ideate together on the art of the possible. Let's get excited about what we can do. Let's set aims for what we can achieve. Let's build a credible plan together to work towards the delivery of a successful outcome, and then celebrate the success at the end.
I like that, celebrate the success at the end. I think that's important with these things, because a lot of it's a voyage of discovery, it's trial and error, a lot of these things. I hear customers also say that you've got to create an environment where failure is okay, that you're going to fail some of these things, they're not going to work, but you're going to learn from these. So if there was one question that you think that, imagine we roll ourselves forward 12 months and we look back.
Yes.
What would the one question we should have asked ourselves now be that we regret we didn't ask ourselves?
That's a very, very good question. I think the question comes back to the user and to the individual in the organization. Am I thinking about how this technology can transform the working lives of my people so that they feel more productive, more empowered, and can achieve more without necessarily having to work longer hours? Not be operating in a culture of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, where they believe, if you go back to the days of the Industrial Revolution, people feared the wheel. They feared the train. And yes, of course, that has an effect on society. And it probably did eradicate certain jobs, but it created new jobs as a consequence. And so what we have to do is take people on that journey so that they can see that opportunity will be created from this and that they are willing to embrace it. And if we educate people in that way, that the likelihood is that AI will be embraced by more people and adopted for the good that it can bring to society and to business. And that if we have people all adopting that mindset, we can achieve more.
Brilliant. I had someone say to me the other day that at the moment AI is a bit like taxation. Everyone thinks it's a good idea until it happens to them. I don't know whether that's true.
Did the Chancellor say that?
Might have been. I won't get into that.
No, that's not it.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts are what an exciting time. Many of us have lived through change before, the mobile phone, the internet. I lived through all of those. And when I look back, there was always uncertainty, ambiguity, doubt about how this would impact lives and change us for the good, the bad, the evil. And there are always all of those mixed in. And I think what we've got to do is take that learning from those previous waves of technology, keep it top of mind and apply it as we go forward. And so that we make this the great wave in society that it can be, and not just in business, but in medicine and other areas of research where it can really benefit humanity rather than harming it.
Thank you very much, Steve. I've very much enjoyed our chat today. Thank you for coming up to Google Norfolk. It's a very remote office, a long way from everybody. I know you came a long way and sincerely appreciate it.
Well, it's a beautiful part of the world, Matt. Thanks for having me, and I've really enjoyed this chat. Thank you. Bye-bye.